Welcome to Hannity on a busy news night. Glad you are with us tonight as President Trump continues his international trip abroad. Look at what's happening at home. America's economy has now become the envy of the world. Our economy firing on all cylinders. And for the first time in 75 years, we are energy independent and a net exporter of energy. Our unemployment rate is at its lowest point since 1969. In fact, we're now seeing record low unemployment for African Americans, Hispanic Americans, Asian Americans, women in the workforce, youth unemployment. That keeps kids like me when I was young out of trouble, 50-year low. And the people that unfairly suffered the most under the Obama-Biden economy, they are now the single biggest beneficiaries of Donald Trump's low taxes, lessening of burdensome regulation, and his America First agenda. Without a doubt, it is an amazing time to be an American, to be looking to advance your life, your career, your standard of living. But that is not what you'll ever hear from the mainstream media mob. Instead, we get obsessively negative coverage of the president every second hour of every day. Conspiracy theories, insults, outright lies always lead the news cycle. And for 2.5 years, the media has hysterically and breathlessly reported lies, a hoax surrounding Trump and Russia. So it is no surprise we have a brand new Pew Research poll that shows Americans now see fake news as a bigger problem than terrorism. That's their poll. According to Pew Research Center, this country is more worried about fake news than terrorism, so-called climate change, racism, sexism, even violent crime. This is a major political victory for President Trump. He has exposed the phony news industry for who they are. For the first time in history, an American president has successfully exposed an abusively biased, corrupt, agenda-driven press for who they really are, with two simple words: fake news. Now, Trump has branded the men and women who are actively working as an extension of the Democratic Party, all while pretending to be journalists. The branding is now permanently tattooed into these so-called news organizations, and they will forever be remembered, their lies, their conspiracy theories, by the American people. I don't think they can ever recover. And while Americans are now aware of the threat that is posed by fake information, by lies, conspiracy theories, you still have the rage-filled, Trump-hating media mob that is never going to slow down. You think they'll admit they're wrong, make corrections, try and adjust, adapt, and listen to the people they're supposed to serve? Don't count on it. Now, during the president's important trip to Europe, well, the fake news smear machine in full gear. Get this. According to the Hill's media reporter Joe Concha, the president has received mostly glowing reviews from the British press. But here at home, a much different picture. As per usual, we have NBC's chief conspiracy theorist, Rachel Maddow, setting the tone for all of her colleagues. You know, hateful, baseless coverage of the president's trip. By the way, the ratings are now showing it. Take a look.
So I hope you have enjoyed your trip to London, Mr. President. Boris didn't have time for you. All of London turned out unanimously to basically drop their drawers and moon you. Plus, on all prominent buildings in London, things designed to embarrass or upset you were prominently projected and displayed.
I think it's very difficult with Trump, though, because he is an egomaniac, and he sees all this as being about him.
What's wrong with him?
Where to begin? I mean...
No, but I'm serious.
I mean, narcissistic personality disorder.
But he clearly appears less capable of sustaining his own thoughts for longer than 4 to 6 seconds. I mean, it used to be he couldn't follow anyone else's conversation. Now he doesn't seem to be able to follow his own train of thought.
All right, now trust me, if Trump were to cure cancer, they would still hate him. Now, thankfully, Americans see past the media's hateful lies. They see past it, their conspiracy theories, armchair psychology sessions. Even according to a CNN poll, a majority of Americans believe that Trump will win re-election. And tonight, more good news for the president and his re-election campaign. His potential challenger, the sleepy, creepy Uncle Joe Biden, is facing a major plagiarism scandal yet again. I'm going to address this in part 2 of my monologue tonight. First, joining us with more on his analysis of America's fake news epidemic, We have the Hill's Joe Concha. Joe, great column today, great comparison today. It's all accurate, and they seem to not be able to control this rage or psychosis.
Yeah, and in this case, though, at least, Sean, you have another media, the British media in this case, that is quite a juxtaposition from what we're seeing in terms of U.S. media. You mentioned it before. Most of it has been not so much positive, but at least it's been objective in terms of the president's visit. It doesn't concentrate so much on the sizzle, but the steak. It concentrates on, for instance, we're talking about British media, the president's relationship with the Queen, his rapport with her. And television is a very powerful medium. It's a visual medium, and you saw the pictures and the optics coming out of there, and it was very good for the president. Almost anybody objective, at least, can say that. That same goes for his relationship with Theresa May and the press conference he held and so on. But what we saw here from the U.S. media, besides some of the sound bites you played from the opinion side, the punditry side, was this obsession with the Trump baby blimp. It was almost like watching the O.J. White Bronco in 1994 all over again. Every time you turned on cable news, it was like the Michael Avenatti of blimps. You turn it on, you couldn't get away from the blimp, and that's all that was basically being concentrated on. And then finally, the obsession with the protests. The protests when Donald Trump went to Britain in 2018 were infinitely bigger, considerably bigger than they were this time around. And even today, during D-Day, the 75th anniversary that occurs tomorrow, you still had protesters and coverage of those protesters on a day where, give it a rest for one day, guys, given the sacrifices that happened 75 years ago in France.
Let me ask you this. I believe that the president has successfully exposed them in a way that nobody else really could, and it's branded. It's tattooed on their foreheads. I don't see their brands recovering. Do you?
I think when the president leaves the stage, whenever that may be, whether that be in a year and a half or 6 years, that this would be like a lot like the 87 stock market crash, the 2008 financial crash in terms of ratings and clicks going away because many in the media, unfortunately, have made him the evil protagonist. And when you take him out of the picture, it's like taking J.R. Ewing off of Dallas. There's no more show. So, yeah, unfortunately, if they want to recover in terms of credibility, I'm not saying all publications or all news channels, but many of them.
Most of them.
A lot, sure.
I would argue 3 networks, 2 fake news cable channels, Post, the Washington Post, New York Times. Let's start there.
True. I still wave my pom-poms for local media, which, you know what, that still has a lot of credibility because we never see opinion being inserted into your local newscast, for instance. You get the news, you get the weather, you get sports.
Joe, it's interesting because every newsroom in America got the Trump-Russia collusion, conspiracy theory, hoax. They all fell for it. And they missed the biggest stories about abuse of power, corruption, rigging Hillary's investigation, the dirty dossier, the FISA applications, lying and a premeditated fraud on a FISA court. It's the, let's see, talk show hosts that do all of these things that exposed it.
Well, look, the Mueller report and what that exposed in terms of there being no collusion between Trump associates and Russia, that was a death blow to this industry. I'm not saying all, again, but many in it. You played a clip of Rachel Maddow before. She had her lowest ratings last month in a very, very busy news month, lowest ratings since Trump's inauguration. CNN, you see, down double digits again last month on top of a 26% loss in audience the month before that. That was a watershed moment when that report and all the promises that we got from pundits and even anchors alike that there absolutely was collusion between Donald Trump and the Russians. And when that promise wasn't delivered, people simply have not come back because they don't trust the messenger anymore, Sean.
Joe Concha, thank you from the Hill. Turning now.